On today's show, the Capitals must plan for the next 3 to 4 months being without the services of Pierre-Luc Dubois. Is there a trade in store? And what is behind Charlie Lindgren's slow start?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan HOLMI. I've covered the Capitals for the past 4 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day and making Locked On the #1 sports network. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the elephant in the room. It is a big elephant. And how do the Capitals plan for life without Pierre-Luc Dubois? The second line center for the Capitals played a huge role for this team last year. And now we hear that the Capitals will be without his services for the next 3 to 4 months. Is there a trade in store? I'll talk about that a bit later. We'll talk about what is behind Charlie Lindgren's slow start. Many people point to back-to-back games, and he's playing the second game of a back-to-back. But what do the numbers ultimately show? And then to close out the show, we'll talk about Alex Ovechkin chasing down yet another record. But let's get going here. The news that we found out here somewhat recently is that, well, we knew that Pierre-Luc Dubois was going to be missing some time, a substantial amount of time. The foreseeable future is what we had heard. But now they're saying 3 to 4 months, and we're talking about February or March. So the tail end of the season, we will be without Pierre-Luc Dubois for the remainder of the season. I guess that's an easy way to look at it. If the Capitals can make it into the playoffs, they'll have him, and we'll have him at the tail end of the season. But when you take a look at it, not ideal. And the questions remain about, do the Capitals have internal options, and should they seek external options? Now, listen, we have tried some of the internal options. We've tried Connor McMichael, Hendrix, Lapierre, Justin Sordoff, all of these guys cycling through at the center position, and tried to mix and match with different wingers around them with very limited success. Now, the question is, of course, knowing that we know that it's not working, right? And I guess we could kind of just keep going down the path that at some point it's got to catch on, except if it doesn't. And then what do the Capitals do? It is my belief that the Capitals must go out and acquire a center, a top-tier center, to help right the ship, to help solidify the 25-26 season before the Capitals are just wandering off into nowhere land and sailing goodbye to the 25-26 season. Now, to be clear here, it's not just the center position. It's the power play. It's the PK. But one glaring deficiency that the Capitals absolutely must take care of is that second line center position. So that is where we'll start. Let's dive into that here. And losing Pierre-Luc Dubois for 3 to 4 months doesn't just leave a hole. It reshapes the Capitals' entire center structure. Like I said, McMichael put in there, and then Lapierre and Sordoff. And who else do we know can play center? Alexei Protas. We haven't seen that yet this season. We know his younger brother, Ilya Protas, down in Hershey can play. Now, those are all maybes, right? Maybes. And if you take a look at the standings, the Capitals are at the bottom, tied last I checked for the bottom of the Metropolitan Division. A team that was looking to take a step forward has suddenly taken a couple steps back. And this isn't just a 1-game thing. This isn't just a 2-game thing. This is an all-out slide. You take a look at it, it was the Blues game where they, returned, but that was against a truly horrible Blues team. So it is difficult. So Pierre-Luc Dubois being out of the mix This was your heavy two-way matchup center, the guy who absorbs tough minutes so younger players don't get thrown under the bus. And I'm talking about Connor McMichael. That's where he's at right now, tasked with a lot of responsibility. And now PLD is out until February or later. And we're already seeing the fallout. One win since his injury. A constant line juggling, young guys taking on more than they should, and it's not ideal. And the feeling is, and I know Spencer Carberry's talked about it, that we have internal options, and like I said, we've tried those. And I don't want to put all of my eggs in the basket that it is going to catch on here at some point. So that's the obvious question: do the Caps go out and get help at center? Yeah, it's doing the thing that Chris Patrick did not do last summer that he should have. We talked about Jack Roslovic. We talked about Nikolai Ehlers, these different guys. And now, hey, we saw this coming. A major injury is going to happen, and the Capitals will have to address it. And we're like, nah, we got internal options. We don't have the right internal options. And honestly, they probably should explore it because the internal depth just isn't enough to carry that kind of load. So let's talk about trade market options. Now, some of these are more fitting than others. I will break down the top options at center. Some of these players I'm going to talk about, and I'll make note of it, play primarily wing, but have a history at center. So let's talk about it. Pavel Zacha from the Boston Bruins, 6'3". Zacha is big, strong, and can handle top 6 minutes. He drives possession and can play both ends of the ice. Boston values him, though, and might not move him easily. So while he fits the style, availability could be a problem. Like his size, 6'3", power forward center, he checks one of the boxes. One of the other names that I've floated out here quite often from the insiders for Locked On Capitals and on YouTube and on Twitter is Nazem Kadri from the Flames. Now, this one is a bit tricky and kind of out there. A veteran two-way center with a playoff pedigree. And what do we know about him? Nazem Kadri is a grinder, a winner, can make tough minutes. He would instantly give the Caps a high-energy physical presence. The caveat, the thing to make note of, no movement clause and personal preference to stay in Calgary makes it tricky. And why do we talk about Pavel Zacha, Bruins, and Nazem Kadri, Calgary Flames? Because both of their teams are not playing great hockey, and they might be trying to offload assets. Would they be doing it this early? I guess I would see the Flames doing that over the Bruins. I think the Bruins still don't think they're out of it yet. And anything's possible. It is still really early in the season. The next one, and this is one to circle, Ryan O'Reilly of the Nashville Predators. Elite defensive center, face-off winner, Selke and Conn Smythe winner. This is an intriguing one. This is the stabilizer. He is elite in faceoffs. He can neutralize top lines. He leads by example. He kills penalties. He mentors younger players. He checks every box Dubois has left open. And O'Reilly immediately stabilizes the roster, buys time for younger players, and lets Dubois come back without pressure. There are other teams sniffing, as the Nashville Predators have not been playing some of their best hockey. And, some guys are good head coaches, and some guys are good GMs, and some are good at both. I'm going to go ahead and say that Barry Trotz is not a really good general manager. Of course, we will forever remember what he did for the Capitals in 2018 and all of that. But there are teams sniffing. Montreal sniffing. Nashville's listening. The price will be picks and prospects, but it's manageable. And that is just something Capitals fans, before I go any further, we're going to have to get comfortable with. We're going to have to give up a piece or two or draft picks to accommodate that. But we already know, so push it out of your mind that PLD is not coming back for 3 to 4 months. With that knowledge, even if you are a glass 3/4 full kind of guy, you must understand what we have seen thus far is not working. I I think that a guy like Ryan O'Reilly would fit the bill. Next one, Braden Schenn, St. Louis Blues, heavy, physical, versatile, center wing. Schenn is practical, attainable, and brings heavy minutes. He can play center or wing, leadership and grit. He's the safety net option if O'Reilly isn't available. Here is where we're swinging for the fences. Now, this is a player that can play primarily wing, but plays center as well. Jordan Kyrou. Again, if the common denominator when I'm talking about these teams, whether it's the Bruins, the Flames, or now the Blues here, is that they're not playing great hockey. So they might be willing to offload assets. But Jordan Kyrou, elite speed and high-end skill. Kyrou is more of a long-term swing, younger, faster, highly skilled. He changes the trajectory of a roster, but a massive cost. Not a patch for midseason injury, more of a rebuild around the youth move. The thing I like about Jordan Kyrou is I take a look at where he plays, primarily the wing, has a history at center, is he would be a good Band-Aid until Pieldy's back, and then he could go to a wing position. Again, aiming a bit for the fences. So which one is the best fit for the Capitals? In my opinion, Ryan O'Reilly, and here's why. Replaces Dubois' two-way matchup and defensive minutes, stabilizes the lineup immediately. McMichael and Lapierre get breathing room, doesn't block Dubois' return. They complement each other. Safest hockey move short-term and long-term, and fits the Capitals' culture, leadership, professionalism, and playoff experience. Schenn is a realistic second option. Kadri and Zacha are situational, and Kyrou is a franchise-level swing. If the Caps want to survive until Dubois comes back, O'Reilly is the guy. But like I said, as I record this a little bit early here, there could be something that happens between now and the time you hear this. That is the move that I think that needs to be made. Any one of those players is intriguing, but we cannot continue to go on as is. This just is not working. And I'm not ready to wave the white flag on the 25-26 season. We haven't even had turkey for American Thanksgiving yet. So that's what we need to do. We need to take a swing for the fences and try to trade and acquire a center that's going to do it. I think Ryan O'Reilly is the most intriguing one, the one that I have circled. I guess it remains to be seen if Chris Patrick is listening to this podcast and has kicked the tires on those players. That could fix this team ostensibly in the near future. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Charlie Lindgren's slow start for the Capitals and what's behind it. Again, we see him struggle on game 2 of the back-to-backs, but what do the numbers show? What is behind his slow start? I'll discuss straight ahead. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making a push. Now, listen, if you're into the Wizards or whatever team around the NBA, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money down. All of a sudden, those games got that much more exciting. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I want to thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network your number one sports podcast network. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in segment 2 here, we're talking about the outlaw, Chucky Sideburns, Agape Love, Charlie Lindgren, and what is behind his slow start with the Capitals this season. Again, many people point to the fact that if there's a back-to-back, and the Capitals have played a lot of back-to-backs already, that he plays game number 2 when the team big picture is, well, rather gassed. Yeah, I mean, is that the reason? Do the Capitals play more confidently in front of Logan Thompson? And even the bigger question remains, something for all you everydayers out there that I spoke about, is that Charlie Lindgren, for me, has never tracked as elite. A couple seasons ago already, I know he signed the new contract here, new-ish contract, that the Capitals would have been better off trading Charlie Lindgren. Now, with his, diminished returns that we've seen, even if the Capitals wanted to trade him, well, the rest of the NHL can see that he's not playing some of his best hockey. But that is the topic for another podcast. What I want to talk about in this segment is what is behind his slow start. So let's talk about that next here. And that's the hard part. It's about the team in front of him too. Talking about his slow start. That's been a reoccurring theme for the Caps this season. Lindgren has had an outstanding season last year. We know that. He earned trust by carrying stretches where the Caps really needed him. And we think back to his history, how he came here. Samsonov and Vanacek, we didn't want to see any more of that. So the Capitals, we traded for and acquired Darcy Kemper, brought in a relatively unknown netminder in Charlie Lindgren, and had to play a big role in when Kemper was lackluster. And we saw him at points last year really step up. Now, that's one thing I want to make abundantly clear, as he has been huge for the Capitals at points, but it's the rough numbers that we have seen thus far this season that has me concerned. And this year, the numbers have not been great. Sub 900 save percentage, high danger goals allowed are up. And yeah, some nights he just looks a little uncomfortable in net. And he is a younger father. I don't know if that factors in. I mean, I don't know. I have a couple kids at home. I know I wasn't my best self at work the next day when I was up all night with kids, doing what kids do. You're changing diapers, you're rocking them back to sleep. I don't know. That's conjecture on my part. Or is it the team not playing confidently around him? And the back-to-back thing, always on the back end of the back-to-back. I mean, I put that in the calculator for sure. But here's the nuance. It's not just the goalie. The truth behind the numbers, the defense in front of him is giving up odd man rushes. That's true. Slot chances are opening up too easily. There's that. Breakouts are sloppy. And when a goalie faces that, even the best in the league look shaky. And I want to put that all in the big picture here. I think that oftentimes it's easy to paint a player when they're playing poorly with a broad brush of they suck. I don't think that Chucky sucks. However, there are things that I think he needs to work on. Then you add in, like I said, inconsistent starts, line juggling after Dubois' injury, trying to find chemistry. This team, big picture, is not playing well. And the fact he hasn't had a rhythm of consistent starts this season is troubling. Goalies thrive on rhythm. Seeing pucks, getting used to timing, building confidence. Lindgren has not had that luxury. And the Capitals have changed positions this year where they want to ride Logan Thompson a little bit more than LT Chucky, LT Chucky, LT Chucky back and forth. And is there something behind him getting a little stale? Perhaps. And let's be honest, the mental side of goaltending is huge. If you're constantly worrying about your defense collapsing on your next start being 2 nights away, it weighs on you. And I get that. And it's not that he's lost any talent. It's that the environment hasn't been conducive to success yet. So when the Capitals do start playing better, and I expect them to start playing better at some point, how does he play then? When the defense is figured out, when the Capitals can figure out how to win games, how does Chucky play? And the coaching staff, the goalie coach, they are not panicking. They're talking about structure, coverage, positioning, gap control, all the stuff that can turn those numbers around. And they're right. That's the biggest thing, is that they're right. Fix the structural issues in front of him. Give him consistent starts, and Lindgren, I believe, will bounce back to who he is. He is a number 2, or he is a 1A. He is the 2B, right? And he has the mechanics. He has the poise. He has the track record. And one other thing about Chucky is that Lindgren thrives under pressure. When the game is tight, the team is counting on him, and he elevates his play to meet them where they're at. So when the Capitals are playing less than stellar hockey, well, then don't be surprised that Lindgren historically has not thrived in those positions. So as the Caps start sorting their lineup in this post-Dubois era, and the young players settle in, Lindgren's rebound is more than likely going to go back up where it's supposed to be. So the takeaway here is it's messy, it's imperfect, but it is fixable. And if it's fixed, the Caps could stabilize both defensively and mentally in a big way. That is the hope anyway. So for the people out there that are saying to kick him to the curb, and, to be clear here, I've never not liked Chucky. My stance is the same as it's always been. A good netminder, not an elite netminder. A good option as a number 2, right? And it wasn't, just a couple seasons ago that he was very sought after. So obviously people know what they know when they see him play. I think that Chucky is a good netminder in the position that he has with the Capitals. Once we get him dialed in, once the defense is playing better, once this team is winning games, I have no doubt that Chucky will be back to the outlaw, Chucky Sideburns, that we remember from seasons past. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Ovi's next record. It's Gretzky, right? That's it, Gretzky. Oh no, there's more records. What is next on Ovechkin's hit list? I'll discuss straight ahead. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using Drip Drop. It's a doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. And listen, oftentimes I'm just running it feels like from the time I wake up to bedtime. And if I go to the gym, I need that extra hydration. That, for me, is why I reach for Drip Drop. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands, using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college pro teams. So I like using Drip Drop as a part of my daily routine. I'll mix a packet in the morning before the gym or during the midday slump. It is my go-to for feeling my best self all day long. I know you're going to love Drip Drop. So right now, Drip Drop is offering our podcast listeners, 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up before the heat hits hard and keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube, like the videos, and comment anything down below, and join us on the Locked On Capitals Insiders, all the news surrounding your favorite team in mind, the Washington Capitals, sent to you in a text message. Check out the show notes for more descriptions, and thank all of you for making the Locked On Podcast Network your number 1 sports podcast network. All right, in the last segment of today's show, we're talking about the Great 8. My captain, your captain, Alex Ovechkin, as he continues to chase down records. Now listen, he got to the 900 goal mark, and he's got off to a slow start, but let's give him a lot of credit. He is the GOAT at the end of the day, not just the GOAT of the Capitals, but the NHL. We know that. The greatest goal scorer of all time. But he's not done, right? And this is what could be his last season in the NHL as a Capital. And what are some of the other things that the Great 8 is chasing down? Let's talk about that in the final segment here. Alex Ovechkin is quietly on pace to pass Nicklas Backstrom as the Capitals' all-time assist leader. Probably didn't have that one on your radar. Maybe you did, but that is an intriguing thing and an interesting that he's closing in. Ovechkin has 733 assists, while Nick Backstrom has 762. And that doesn't get nearly the attention that the goal scoring does, but it should. that we know that Ovechkin can score with the best of them. Fine twine, maybe not to start this season, but big picture. Ovechkin has always been known, for what he's known for as an ultimate goal scorer. But this guy who can one-shot anyone from anywhere, the finisher, the highlight reel. But lately, there's been a shift where we've seen him, getting in more offensively and not goal scoring, but, getting assists. And you can see it in the way he's moving without the puck. He creates lanes. He's threading passes. He's setting up teammates in ways that make the offense hum. That tells you a couple things about his evolution. One, Ovechkin's game is becoming more complete. Not just the guy that sets up from the left dot. He's no longer just the shooter. He's a playmaker. He's a creator. He's keeping the offense alive even when the team is dealing with injuries or roster shifts. Now, again, to circle back, I know because people are going to say, have you seen how many goals he scored? I have, but he is chipping in other ways. Not just this season. I'm talking the last handful of seasons. And number two, it speaks to his hockey IQ and awareness. I mean, you just take a look at the goal that he scored for number 900. That's going to go up in his highlight reel for sure. And he reads defenses and their coverages very well. He manipulates defenders to open up space for his line mates to get involved in assists. And he's been doing it consistently enough to chase that assist record. And number three, this just adds to his really great legacy, right? That we know that he's already the greatest goal scorer. But now we're talking about him chasing down the assist record. We've celebrated his 900 goals. We've talked about him being the greatest goal scorer. But if he surpasses Backstrom, that is the ultimate mic drop. He cements himself not just as a goal scorer, but as, a true all-around offensive powerhouse for the franchise. And let's not forget here, this comes in a season where the Caps are missing Dubois, or we are now. And, Ovechkin isn't just carrying the goal load anymore. He's balancing scoring with setting the younger guys up. And we hope that kicks in as well. Stabilizing the team in a leadership and production sense and quietly doing it in ways that don't always make the highlight reels. Of course, number 900, well, that goes right up there, doesn't it? But, to celebrate goals, sure, but don't sleep on the playmaker. The full package that is Alex Ovechkin. And I think that, of course, people will always point to that he's not the best defensive player, that there are some gaps there, but big picture in the offensive department, goal scoring, check, but now assists, chasing down number 19, Nicklas Backstrom. That's quite an accomplishment as well. So, it's going to be interesting to see with Ovechkin at the end of the season. Is this it? Is this it? Does he retire? Does he go to the KHL? If he does, if he retires, if he steps away from the NHL, he has checked a lot of boxes, right? To be the greatest goal scorer for one, but I'm going to go ahead and say one of the greatest players, big picture, to ever do it. And that's quite an accomplishment for a guy that I think is oftentimes sold short. So the takeaway from this segment is a lot of times people think of Alex Ovechkin as a goal scorer. Oh, he is that, but he's also edging closer and closer to Nicklas Backstrom as the assist leader. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. And now for your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan HOLMI, and I'll talk to you again next time.